So I want to welcome everyone to season 1 episode of Counter Conversations. It's the show where we encourage self-exploration. We use fearless conversation, ask challenging questions, and shamelessly discuss things like life, love, passion, career, marriage, parenting, and much more. It's all in an effort to help you understand whether you're just checking off some conventional boxes or really living the life you want to. I'm so looking forward to sharing today's episode where I interviewed Peter Kofitsas. He's got a very impressive professional background, but that's not what impressed me about him. In honor of National Men's Health Month, we're going to talk about men's mental health, generational messaging, how to rewire that conversation, doing away with gender roles, and creating real connection. It was a very, very satisfying gender-bending conversation. And up until now, my conversations have been geared mainly towards women. But I realized based on, in honor, like I said, of National Men's Health Month and my social media, men are listening to me, and not just, a few of them. I do have a pretty big audience calling for this kind of conversation. So buckle in. We are about to have a really wonderful time. So let me introduce Peter. Peter is a speaker, an international life and health coach, a culinary nutritionist, physical therapist, and a former football scholarship athlete. So he's the author of 3 books, including Shop, Cook, Eat, and has appeared on many networks like ABC, Fox, MSN, and TLC. Peter, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Brené. Happy to be here.
You sent me over quite the CV. I had a really hard time. I had to work with my online business manager to really cut this down to something, more digestible. Well, why don't you tell, the audience today a little bit more about yourself and what I've missed in this little brief synopsis I've given them?
Well, thanks. First of all, thanks for having me on, and I'm so happy to be talking with you. You and I, off camera, have great conversations, and I cherish that. So we're going to do that today, which is awesome. My CV, it's so interesting. When I hear it, I think, oh my God, did I do all those things? And I could be critical about it too. I could be a little embarrassed, and I could also be proud about it. But I've been on a journey, like you, like a lot of people, to try to figure myself out. And in the process, I've been compelled to share a lot of that with whoever will listen to it, because I feel like if we could be authentic, we have credentials, right? And we have expertise. I have a nutrition degree, I have a master's of science in physical therapy, and I want to share that stuff with people. But what I really love to do is dig deeper. So I use those credentials, I use that background, that science, that experience that I've had one-on-one with patients for 24 years and clients. But I love to dig deeper. And so what I'm doing now is incorporating everything I've learned into how to help people really connect to their best qualities, and then use those qualities to get what they want, and then see what comes up for them. When they go out to start a new challenge, set a new goal for themselves, a different part of their lives, what comes up for them, and really looking it square in the eye and addressing it, being authentic about it. And I hate to even say overcome, but just integrate it into their lives and not use it as something they have to fight against, or it's a constant struggle, but accept, grow, change, connect with like-minded people like you and I are doing here today, and just living this really fulfilling life, doing something purposeful, and having some fun. I forget to do that a lot, Bernice. I get so serious sometimes that I forget to smile and have fun and have a good time. So I'm kind of incorporating all of that experience to living a really purposeful, meaningful, fulfilling life, full of health, full of surrounding yourself with people that you love and care about, and doing really great things to help others as well.
Yeah, my word is playful. I forget to be playful. But I don't think you can do any of that, Peter, without having these conversations, without saying, hey, listen, I experienced this. It changed the fabric of who I was this way. This traumatic event happened. I had this experience. I think up until now, well, I don't know that so few men are capable of having this conversation. I've had it with you, as you said in the beginning of the show. I've had it with you a few times now. It was one of the things that, drew us together. I hope it continues to draw us together. But so few men, have been able to have this conversation. I think maybe on the surface they can, but not to the depth at which, I feel like you could go with me. Like, I feel like if I go mock vulnerability, I swing the racket, you swing it back to me, and it's so fun to have those conversations. I have them all the time with women. Women, it's just my own personal experience that women are more like capable of being more vulnerable with each other. I think that men and women, and we'll talk about this when we talk about Ariel, because I'm so excited to talk about her. But I always open the show by promising my audience a fearless conversation. And I'm hoping that you and I today can really dive into a fearless conversation. Why don't we set the scene for today's conversation by saying, talking about the different messages that we received growing up in terms of our genders, right? So what were you told about being a boy or a man and a man?
Yeah, well, I know you want to dive deep. I'm not even sure. I love it, by the way. I'm all in. I'm not sure if I could swear, and just if I express to you how my father taught me to be a man, my older brother and me to be men, it's pretty jarring. I write about it in my upcoming memoir, and friends and people on social media who've read it are they're jarred by it, especially women, because, I'll paraphrase. My father said, you're a man and women have one purpose, and that purpose is to please you. So you do whatever you want with them. So Bernice, this lesson started before I even had an erection. I didn't know what sex was. I didn't understand any of it. I was probably 4 or 5 years old, my first memories. And I just remember my father always saying, fuck any girl you want. They're yours for the taking. They're all bitches and they'll burn you in the end. I mean, that was my sex education from my father. Now, my father was a complicated man. On the other side of that, he showed a flip side was incredible love for his children, including my little sister. But then he could turn on a dime. So we didn't know which dad we were going to get. But I got a message about women that they were less than and that we should dominate them. And they're really here just to please you. And my brother and I just, thank God it never sunk in, Bernice. Stuff gets into our subconscious and we act it out. But my brother and I have always tried to be respectful of women. I have always tried. I don't know where this came from. Maybe I just did the opposite of what my dad taught me, but I've always wanted a woman to feel comfortable and safe in my presence. And I tell my 14-year-old son that. I have 2 daughters and my son is 14. I tell him, man, if you're with a woman, if you're with a girl, she should feel safe and comfortable in your presence. If you do those 2 things, then you're doing a good thing, I think, as a male. So I got those messages. My sister got the opposite message from my father. Don't have sex. It's bad. If you have sex, I'll kill you, literally. And he told my brother and me, if your sister has sex with a boy, you kill her and you kill the boy, or I'll kill you. Those are exact words. That's not a paraphrase. And I just remember hearing that over and over in my life.
It's funny because as I hear you say that, I felt my heart rate accelerate. But I also thought about my mom's messaging. It instantly lined up for me. And I can't believe I'm going to say this live, but so my messaging, there were 2 things that come to mind. My messaging, like your dad said, fuck anybody you want to. My messaging was, some girls sit like this and some girls sit like this, but the girls who sit like this get this like that. And you never want to be that girl. So she taught me to sit as if I had a pill between my knees.
Wow.
She said, make believe you have an aspirin between your kneecaps. That's how you sit, straight and like a lady always, right?
Mhm.
The other messages I got were more subliminal. They were from princess books, right? Where how there was always some knight in shining armor that was going to show up and fix things or rescue me or something. It wasn't until like much later on. And I think, well, the impact of the lesson happened when my dad died, right? 10 years ago. This year is 10 years. And I realized, wow, nobody's coming. If something happens now, I'm an adult. My mom was really, she just passed away, as you know, in November, but thank you. She wasn't capable. She was very sick for a long time. But I realized, wow, I really am in this, like, now I'm a grown up. Like, I don't have parents anymore. And so, but the truth is that I can save myself. Every now and then, though, a problem will happen where my mind goes into like this Rolodex where it like spins through and it goes, where is that knight in shining armor? Oh, wait, you are your knight in shining armor. You're not waiting for one to show up.
Yeah. God, so many things, Bernice, that I'm just making notes because you're just touching on so much. Can I just jump in for a second?
Yeah, go for it.
Like, okay, you got that message from mom. I got that message from my dad. Now I know parents, because I'm a parent, you're a parent. We do and say things to our children, model behavior that we think is helping them. My father, as misguided as it is, thought he was doing the right thing for my brother and me, setting us up as males. Right. That's what he was taught, and that's what they were taught, and that goes generational. I'm sure your mother thought she was helping you. Now, here we are. You get that message, close your legs. I get the message, hit everything you can. We meet. No wonder there's so much challenge in relationships, because all we want is to love and be loved and to share that. Frank, my therapist, says there's no greater shot of B12 than when two people connect intimately. And now that's all we want, but we have these messages. We come to these relationships with that. No wonder it's so difficult to navigate and to realize roles. Like I do believe there's a male energy and a female energy. You mentioned Ariel before, my girlfriend. The reason Ariel and I connect is we have both energies, I believe, but my male energy connects to her female energy, and it's a magnet. It's mutual love, it's mutual appreciation, and it's roles, and it's just, it feels right, and it feels authentic and genuine and safe. That's one thing I wanted to say.
But the one thing that I want to jump in there and say is that, like, generally speaking, one person establishes themselves as superior or dominant in the roles that we were taught, right? Mm-hmm. And so what I learned is the person who makes the most money, right? That's an ego-based currency in a relationship, right? So, and it almost makes the other person by virtue submissive or subservient. And that is not, look, I mean, I know that there are relationships out there where submission and subservience play a role, right? An intimacy role, or however. I don't know enough about that world, but I would say to you, on a surface level, no. Most women don't want to be subservient to their husbands because he makes more money. Because the truth of the matter is, raising a family, holy good grief, is just as hard. There's just no paycheck. And I'll tell you what, when your kids become teenagers, there's no gratitude. There's absolutely no gratitude. So you, in one of our previous conversations, right about here, you talked about abandoning the self.
Yeah. Can I back up for a second? Because again, there's a couple of things I want to comment on that. And I agree with you about roles like that. And when I say that Ariel and I have this masculine and feminine energy. There's no dominance. No one's better than the other. No one's more powerful, I'll say, because she has her power, I have my power. They come together. There's this beautiful dance that happens. So it's not that I'm just more aggressive and she's more passive. It has nothing to do with that. It has to do with authentic connection and my best qualities and her best qualities connecting and being present and authentic. I mean, I don't know how else to describe it. So I agree with you. What shouldn't be, no one should be subservient. It shouldn't go either way. I know women in their relationships are more dominant of their males because they feel like they have to be, because the male is more passive. And that's not healthy either, in my personal experience. No judgment on anyone, but I feel like there has to be a dance and a blend back and forth, and a mutual respect and a safety and no judgment. The other thing I wanted to share, when you said there's no one coming, that the knight in shining armor is not coming, that reminded me of Harry Potter. If you read Harry Potter, if you've seen in one of the books and in the movies, he thinks he's being saved by his father across the lake, who's dead. His father's dead. And he sees this vision. It's this bright light. And it's, my father has come to save me. And then there's a twist of the story. There's a travel back in time. And Harry's on the other side of the water. And he says, wait, my father's going to come and save me. Watch, he's going to save me. And then they're waiting, they're dying on the other side of the water. No one's coming. Harry realizes it's him. He is the one that's going to save himself. J.K. Rowling did a beautiful job there of illustrating that we have whatever we need within us to save ourselves. And if we can do it with a partner that complements that, how much sweeter is that? How much more beautiful and more fulfilling? Because now you can share it with someone else. So just wanted to comment on that.
No, I think it's a really great point, about not establishing dominance in a relationship. I was at a Tony Robbins event sometime in December before COVID hit. And he does, it's the name of the event is called Date with Destiny. And he does this one segment where he takes, it's a video of like men jousting, and, the one guy goes, freedom. And instinctively, all of the men in the crowd raise their hands, they start, and it's over and over and over and over and over again, right? So what it shows is what he's trying to say is that there is a natural born instinct in men to protect women, right? So without saying much or without doing much, he goes into this whole other story and he puts the song on, Girls Just Want to Have Fun. And the girls are all in the aisle dancing and singing. And he shows, okay, men, if you want a woman to be playful, you want a woman to really be in her feminine self, you have to do what you talked about earlier. You have to protect. She has to feel safe. She has to feel safe with you. If she doesn't feel safe, she's unlikely going to give you that part of herself.
Yeah, I agree 100%. And I'm smiling as you're telling the story because I've been to that event with Tony Robbins, I think at least 3 or 4 times. And
twice.
It's incredible, right? It's 2,000 people. And there's like, I guess, 1,000 men screaming, and then there's 1,000 women with this feminine energy. It truly is incredible. I have goosebumps thinking about it now.
Right?
And it's not right. He doesn't say we're not dominating when we're saying, I think you and I are saying the same thing. When we're saying as a man, your instinct is to protect women and to make them feel safe. It's not with your muscles and that you're going to beat the shit out of someone. That it could be that, but it's also that you could be yourself, what you're saying. You could be yourself, and I'm not going to judge you, and I'm not going to use it against you. That is so hard to do. And I think that does go, you mentioned abandonment, Bernice. I think that goes to abandonment because now it's a long conversation, we know, about abandonment, and abandonment could be subtle. But if you're abandoned as a child, then you're going to be, you're not going to feel fully loved. And I'm really just cutting to the chase here. There's so much more to what this is, but so you're not going to do a
whole other segment on this conversation alone.
I know. So I'm not going to feel completely confident in myself. So I'm not going to reveal my true self. And if I can't reveal my true self, I'm not comfortable with you revealing your true self because it could threaten me. So Bernice, you're attractive, smart. I don't want to say aggressive, but there's things you want in your life and you want to bring them into you. That is those are wonderful qualities that me as a male who was abandoned in my childhood can be threatened by, because I feel like, oh God, she's going to realize I'm not as good as her and she's going to reject me as a partner. Now that all of that could be unconscious. You don't even know that's going on. But the way it plays out consciously is judgment. Oh, Bernice, why'd you do that? Why'd you say that? Why did you act that way? Oh God, you're always doing this. You're always doing that.
Oh,
That's
I've
what
been there.
I've been in those relationships too. And I've done that. And I see it for what it is now. And then when I did that, my partner would close up and then the relationship is dead. Keep doing that, the relationship dies. There's nowhere to go with it.
It's like bricks on a wall. But I want to read a quote around this. Brené Brown, as you know, is one of my all-time favorite human beings. I follow a lot of her work. I feel like I always have to catch up with her. You know, I got to do a whole session on catching up on Brené. But she says that in her book, Braving the Wilderness, she says, I know who I am, and I will not negotiate that with you. I'll negotiate a contract with you. I will negotiate maybe even a topic with you. But I'm not going to negotiate who I am with you, because then I may fit in with you, but I no longer belong to myself. I heard that for the first time. It was like a huge mic drop for me, that I was negotiating these parts of myself in relationships with, like, why in God's creation would I ever give that kind of power away? You know, once you learn how, and you know, I think it's almost that we have overused this at this point, overused the word aligned ourselves, right? What does that mean? So when you stop tolerating things or stop trying to fit in, and you understand the true meaning of the word belonging, it's something entirely different. I don't want to fit in. If you don't think I'm cool and you don't think I fit in, it's taken me decades to figure that out, but then I don't belong and I don't want to. You know, it's a very, very different conversation.
It is. And it's, you know, when I talk to Frank, my therapist, about all this, Bernice, it's so much of this is subconscious. We don't even know we're doing it or reacting this way, or we're acting a certain way. So that's why when at the beginning of the segment, I said, what I want to do is help people dig deeper, find this stuff out, figure themselves out first so that they could have these relationships that are really, really fulfilling and connected. But if I didn't look at myself first, what are my insecurities? Where are they coming from? What do I believe about myself? Oh, I can look directly at my parents and see, not to blame them, but to understand my self-doubt came from my parents' self-doubt that came from their parents and their parents and so on. It's generational. So I'm really a decent human being. I'm kind, I'm compassionate. I've got some athletic ability. I can now look at my natural strengths and my male characteristics or masculinity, because I do connect to that for myself. And I could feel more comfortable being in a relationship and letting that partner express themselves. And instead of judging them, saying, oh, they're being themselves, how lucky am I that this person's revealing themselves to me, instead of saying, oh, they're acting weird. I don't like the way they're dancing, the way they said that, the way they interacted with that person. I know when I'm in a relationship like I am now with Ariel, I'll just say with Ariel, I know what she's doing. I know where it's coming from because I get her. We've been able to communicate deeply, to express a lot of these insecurities in a safe place, and not using it against the other partner when we're pissed off a couple of days later and said, you're whatever, using it against that person. And then one of us could mess up. We could say something stupid. We could make a mistake. We could screw up a dinner. And then instead of the other judging and criticizing and picking away, we can laugh about it and say, I know your intention was to make this incredible meal, but it's not so incredible because you burnt it. We could laugh about it. And then she laughs, I laugh, and it's vice versa. I mean, I burn, she burns, whatever, it doesn't matter. And then it's a whole new, and then our intimacy is incredible because no one's holding on to something from a couple of hours ago at dinner and saying, I can't believe she said that about my dinner, man. Doesn't she know how hard I worked and I went shopping and I got flowers and I played the music and I put candles on? Now there's resentment in the bedroom instead of, God, I really love and appreciate this person. And it's a whole
Resentment
different
riding
dynamic.
shotgun.
What's
That resentment riding shotgun in a relationship.
Mm-hmm.
You do realize that you are somewhat of a unicorn though, right?
Well, why do you say that?
Because as you know, I'm divorced. I've been divorced now. December was 3 years, so it's going on 3.5 years. I'm still single. Part of the reason that happened was, I knew I wanted to get the kids in the house, get them settled. Then COVID hit. And now, like, as I'm on these dating websites and as I'm out in the world talking, and I think this is why I'm, so attracted to you as a human being, just because it's so nice to have the opposite gender be able to hold this kind of space for a woman. I'm curious though, could I have had this conversation with this Peter 5 years ago?
No, I would say no. I would have, you would have seen my facade, unconscious. The initial name of my memoir was Perfect Peter. I've since changed it to Waking from the Fire. But I built, like a lot of my friends and family and other people, up this perfect facade because I had this low self-worth inside of me because it was put onto me by my parents and their parents and their parents, et cetera. So no, I could not have had this conversation with you, Bernice, because I couldn't have revealed to you that I wasn't perfect, that I didn't speak perfect, that I didn't look perfect, that I didn't dress perfect, that everything I did was above and beyond. And the funny thing is, society rewards these characteristics. I got rewarded by speaking a certain way, looking a certain way, acting a certain way. And it helped my career in a way. I spoke more and more and more places and made more money, but it wasn't built on a foundation. So eventually it crumbled. So the answer is no, I couldn't have done this without the past 4 years of working with a therapist, a really good therapist who's experienced in childhood trauma. I really feel that if you have anything in your past and you want therapy to be effective, it just makes sense to me have the therapist have experience in childhood trauma. I worked with the 12-step program. I wasn't addicted, but I came from an addicted home. So I went through a adult children of alcoholics 12-step program, saved my life, changed my life, and saved my life.
Yeah, we'll talk about that.
Yeah. And then through journaling, which has now become my memoir, I was able to see my parents for the struggling and suffering people that they were. And it helped me have empathy for them, like Brené Brown talks about. And it shifted the anger and the resentment to, oh man, they were just doing their best, but they messed up. I'm going to hold them accountable. And I'm not going to pass that on to my kids, but I'm going to, I see them for who they are. And I know they put their low self-worth on me. For me, that was the foundation. And the foundation was, I don't feel good enough because I didn't feel good enough to my parents because they didn't feel good enough to their parents. I can't stress that enough, how
right.
that
No,
little,
I had a similar experience. I wrote 13 chapters of my own memoir, and I decided to hit a pause because my mom passed, and I wanted to give myself some time to let that settle, because part of the feedback that I got from my editor was, you need to be more angry at your mom. But I had arrived in this moment when I understood, we're not just talking about generational messaging, we're talking about generational trauma. And I never really knew. I mean, I just thought that with like weird people talked about that before. No, real authentic people talk about that. People with emotional intelligence are having those conversations. People who have achieved a certain level, like you're talking about with Ariel, right? She clearly has done this work too. If she has not done the work with a warrior, you can't be aligned with a warrior. You know, you both have to be warriors in your own journey, but you both have to be working at that. So clearly she is too. And I say that there is, of all the classes that we learn, and I say this over, this is like regurgitation at this point, over and over and over again. We're taught things like how to play the recorder, which music is an everyday part of my life. It's super important to me. The square root of a number. But nobody ever teaches us how to have a relationship. What does emotional intelligence look like? So you have men, I talked before about being on dating websites, who we are 5 sentences into a conversation before I get the dick pic. What is that?
That is, if I had to say, that is, I'm not good enough, but look at this, I'm going to distract you. So that just enough so I can get something from you. And I don't look at it as malevolent. I look at it as a survival technique. Like we said, we just want to connect, right? Male, female, whatever. It doesn't matter. We as human beings want to connect to other human beings. And if we don't feel good enough, we're going to do something like buy a power suit, diet, become obsessed with food, drive a certain type of car. What's that?
Plastic surgery.
Surgery, yeah, all these things that we do. And I know, God, if this work has taught me nothing, Bernice, it's helped me look at people, instead of saying, what an asshole, who would do that to you, to, oh, there must be something that person feels they're lacking, that they have to do this, that they can't just communicate with you and say, here, I like this is the type of person I am, I love doing this, because subconsciously or consciously, that's not going to impress Bernice. She's this high-powered woman. I got to do something above and beyond. And what better than to shock you with something like, oh, maybe it'll distract her just enough to get in her pants or whatever it is they're trying to do. I think they're trying to get more than that, a relationship, but it might just in their brain be, I just want to have sex with this person.
Well, I just want to clear the air for any men who might be thinking that this is like somehow a powerful action. I'm sure there is a small subset of women I have a very hard time believing the words I'm saying right now, but there may be a small subset of women. But for those of us who are really looking for that deep connection, those of us who have done the work, you know, for the warrior women out there, I know that I can speak for them by saying that that's not it.
Correct. Now, I want to add another amendment to that, and I agree with you. The other amendment is, it's not that the dick pic is never going to come up in the relationship. It's just not your opening line.
Right.
Build the relationship, build the trust, build the passion and the sensuality. And then when they're least expecting it, you send that pic and you say, man, I'm so lucky to have this person in my life. They're awesome.
Well, you know,
that's playful. Then it's playful, like you said, right?
Bingo. You just stole the words out of my mouth. Like, it's the part, like what I think, you know, it's just been my experience. Let me just not speak for all men. I would just say that it's my experience that men don't understand that women are like what's those lollipops with the gooey inside? The playful side. If you can get through the hard shell, the woman who's sitting like this because she doesn't want to get this, once she feels you have held space for her, that she can, you know, when Alyssa and I today were preparing for this, I made her listen to the song by Taylor Swift. The song is called Stay, Stay, Stay. And we'll put this in the show notes too. She talks about how she got into an argument and she threw something at him and they went to bed mad at each other. And when they get up the next day, she's like, well, I think we should talk about this because I learned you should never leave it unresolved. And so he goes in the other room, he comes back and he puts a helmet on, a football helmet on. He sits down, he says, okay, now I'm ready. Yeah. And I just think a man, you know, and I put this somewhere in my notes for today's conversation, you know, so what does it mean when a woman feels safe and I can speak for myself when I say you nailed it before when you said that I can storm. Women storm. That's who they are. You know, Tony Robbins talks a lot about this in that segment we talked about earlier. Women storm. It's who we are. We're not crazy. We're just passionate. And if you could hold steady for us, stand still in our storm, and let us do that, that's where the gooey center is.
Absolutely. Because that passion then gets transferred onto you. Man, if you just would let her storm, let her crazy come out. And I mean that in a good way. Like you look at it as something different. Like, God, this person is so passionate, instead of, man, they're nuts. Like, you know, it's a different way to look at it. If you're really getting to know someone and you know where their crazy is coming from. And I get crazy, Ariel gets crazy, my friends get crazy. If you know where the crazy is coming from and you could sit with it, give it space, then it's just like letting off steam. And then what I have observed is that person gets balanced again. And they're like, oh, you're still here? Okay, let's do something fun. Let's talk about something else. I'm done with that. It's done. It's gone. Unless if I stop it.
It doesn't ride shotgun in the bedroom.
Yeah. If I stop it, it doesn't go away. Now I hold that. She holds that to the next day, the next week, the next year, the next decade. And then where's the relationship? Now, I do want to back up too. I want to say I was married for 24 years to a wonderful, wonderful woman. I didn't know any of this. I wish I had, but I didn't. And that was my journey. I can't beat myself up about it, feel guilty. I've known men that are divorced that feel like they failed. They feel like failures. And I don't feel like a failure. I feel like, unfortunately, this was my path. Fortunately and unfortunately, this was my path. My ex-wife and my children were supposed to come on this journey with me. They're on their own journey. They're having their own experiences. And as long as on the other side of it, I could say to them, I'm sorry, I did this, I did this, I did this. I'm sorry. I wasn't even conscious of it, but I'm still owning it. I want to make amends. And the program is called Making Amends, to someone in a safe, environment. If someone abused you, molested you, you have to be safe about this, obviously. So there's a whole process involved. But I went back and I made amends to my children and to my ex-wife. And I said, you're a wonderful person. You're the best mother I could have married. One of the best decisions in my life was to marry you. I never have to worry about my children. I'm proud of that fact. But if I didn't do this work, I'd just be angry. I would just find something to be pissed off about and angry. And maybe deep down, I'd feel like a failure, like some of my friends have expressed, feel bad about myself. And then if I feel bad about myself and I don't want to deal with that pain because it's pain, then I'm going to project that pain onto someone else. And I'm going to say, that person's an asshole. What a jerk. How selfish. And I don't want to do that anymore. I did that for years inside. I judged everyone inside. If you met me 5 years ago, you would have never said, oh, Peter's such a great guy. He's so easygoing. On the inside, I judged everyone because I was judging myself and I was projecting that judgment onto others. And I'm just so grateful that I have that wisdom now, I guess, that's come through the ages. I'm not the first person to go through this. And I could look at it now and say, okay, if I act a certain way, I could see where it's coming from and I need to apologize for it because it's for me. It just happens to benefit that other person too. So it's a win-win. In my opinion, it's like, how can you lose? But it's hard to say, I fucked up, I did wrong, I'm sorry, because that other person might use that to attack you. So it's got to be done in a safe environment, if possible.
Again, I'm going to say you're a unicorn. And I would also add that had it not been for this camera rolling, had we done this episode today in the way that I wanted to, which was the way I have been doing it just by audio, I probably would have broke down and cried a moment ago. And because I don't think a lot of men, ex-husbands in particular, can sit back and say, I don't love her that way anymore. And I won't exclude men this way. I will say women too. Most people in divorce situations, to be fair, don't look at the situation and say, I can tell you that I don't ever have to worry about my kids. I don't ever have to worry about my kids with my ex-husband. My daughter had a severe brain injury on his watch, but let me tell you something, it had nothing whatsoever to do with his parenting. It was an accident in the front lawn when she was snow tubing, and we both have let her go down that same lawn multiple times throughout their childhood without a helmet. But he's an amazing dad. And I don't think, there's like that appreciation, because you get caught up in the nuances of raising kids with different values, but it's so important that, again, it's just another sign of emotional intelligence where, you didn't have this awareness before, right? And so I want you to hang on and maybe just jot down some notes, because I'm going to ask you later for some resources for men. And I want to have Alyssa put that in our show notes today, because again, I mean, I know I said it 100 times, but I don't know a lot of men like with this perspective.
Yeah.
With a lot of what you're sharing today, it is work that I think, and it was the reason why when I went, look, because you've got this background, Peter, that you can talk about food, you can talk about men's physical health you're a physical therapist, you are, you have this amazing professional background. But the reason why I wanted to talk to you in particular today, as I said, when I opened the show, it was, and it's all super impressive, but this kind of health, men's mental health, is something I think there needs to be more robust conversation about.
I agree. And it is challenging, but there's more of us out there than you might think, Bernice, because I meet my friends personally. We can talk about this stuff. There are men in my life where they just can't talk about this. I had a very close family member who was like a brother to me, that I just had to separate with love. I love him. I do anything for him. I just don't hang out with him anymore, because when I expressed some of this stuff, he did what he was taught. Bro, come on, you got to bust through this. You got to move on. You can't be depressed. You got to overcome it. Like Rocky, you got to fight through it. And I was like, I've done that for 30 something years, bro. It didn't work. I'm tired. I'm exhausted. I'm a smart guy. If it was going to work, it would have worked. And so I had to separate from some people, just respectfully distance. And then I attracted into my life. I just think through the universe, through God. I happen to believe in God now, or you could believe in the universe, whatever it is, law of attraction. I've attracted into my life people who, when I share with them, men included, and I say to them, yeah, I could doubt myself so much that I can't even get myself to do my blog post or whatever it is. Once I say that, they're like, yeah, me too. And they'll say, one of them, I don't want to reveal anything with my friends, but they could be super, super successful men financially, and they could be successful men in their relationships. But when I reveal something like that, the men that I've surrounded myself with will say, yeah, this is what I do. And they share, we bond, we connect over it, and that's awesome. Now, you can't do that with everyone, because if I do it with a certain group of my friends, they'll say, you're such a pussy, dude. They'll joke around, they'll do that male uncomfortable thing that you may or may not be familiar with, that some men do. And they'll be like, well, do you have your tutu on today? You going to ballet class? Shit like that. And those aren't the guys you share this stuff with.
No.
But under the right circumstances, Bernice, those guys might reveal themselves if they feel safe. I think what I do, because I'm just compelled to do it, I'm not amazing. I really don't believe there's anything.
Oh, yes, you are.
Thank you. But I really just believe 4 years ago, I was driven to my knees with just not knowing what the hell is wrong with me. I just felt terrible. And there's a whole childhood trauma thing where when we get to the age that Our parents suffered their worst traumas. It could feel like we're going to die. We don't even know what it is. The other thing is when our children get to the age that we suffered our worst traumas, that hits us in the head too. And it's like around the 40s and 50s, unfortunately, a lot of us suffered our traumas, and around our younger years into the teenage years, a lot of us suffered our traumas, and that shit just keeps coming up generationally. And it could really knock us for a loop. It knocked me for a loop. Some people go deeper into their addiction. They drink more, they smoke more, they gamble more, they have more sex, they cheat more. For me, it was just like, I can't do this anymore. For my father, it was suicide. When I was 16, my father was 50. He committed suicide. He just couldn't handle it anymore. The pain. Thank you. And I didn't want that for myself. I love my children. I always wanted to have children. I didn't want to do that to them because I knew what it felt like for me. So I had to do better. And that's when I literally was driven to my knees. My ex-wife, my wife at the time, said, why don't you just try therapy one more time? This time, try a male. I've always had female therapists. And it just clicked. Frank and I instantly, I told him, Frank, I think my father was an alcoholic. He zeroed in on it. He had childhood trauma training. He never judged anyone. He never judged me or my family or anything. And he just said, you're not the first person, Peter. This has happened for generations. Here's the literature. Here's what can help. He directed me to the 12-step program. He said, there's a program that meets every Monday at 7:30 at this church. You might be interested. It's up to you. I did the research. I showed up, changed my life. The program recommended journaling. That journal turned into a memoir. And now here you and I are talking about this, Bernice. Instead of me talking to you about how to exercise smarter and lose weight, we're talking about how to, I think so much more important, how to connect to your true self, how to connect to others on that authentic level. And then you'll lose the weight, you'll exercise, you'll do everything that you can't get yourself to do, I believe, because you're connected to your power. And that's what Tony Robbins talks about too. He just, in a room full of 2,000 people, you can't get intimate like a therapist can, or like a 12-step program can, where you're digging deep into the personal hurts that you've carried for your whole life, most likely, and then slowly start to heal those. That's the other thing. I know I've been going on, but the other thing that journaling and then the memoir did for me, Bernice, is it took me back to those exact moments when my mother, my father, and my mother embedded within me their worst parts. There's chapters and segments where I write that I know the moment I felt stupid, because my father told me, the moment I felt useless, not important. I know those exact moments. That's one of the gifts of a 12-step program and journaling specifically, that you can go back and say, oh, I'm not an idiot. I'm not stupid. I'm not lazy. Someone just put this on me because someone put it on them. And that is a great gift. And I think that's why I can talk about this stuff, because for me, it's just like, holy shit. Like you're talking about school. No one talks about this stuff in school.
No one talks about this
most
stuff.
families don't talk about it. At least I don't know any families that talk about stuff on a deeper level. And God, it's so important, because so many of us feel the same. As I go on this journey, I just, if I can be authentic and vulnerable, then it's incredible how many people feel the exact same way, whether they're rich or poor. It doesn't matter. Whether they're beautiful or perceived ugly, whether they're skinny or fat, whether they're dressed well or not, whether they're driving a fancy car or riding a bike, it doesn't matter. Right. What I have found is a lot of us feel the same way. God, why don't we start talking more about it so that we could all feel better?
Well, that's why, one of the most attractive things about having this conversation live with you today was, and one of the reasons why, quite frankly, I agreed to do it on camera as opposed to, as I said, through an audio, is just to see like your physiology, is to see my physiology and how like that playfulness comes in. Like you used the word before, aggressive. A man has to be okay with that. Any man that I date now, and most men that I've met are not. They like it, they're drawn to it in the beginning, and then somehow along the line where I start really showing up and I start really being they're getting to know more and more of me, and they're like, whoa, But I wanted to circle back before we talked a little bit about anger. And I'll have Alyssa put in the show notes today, The Dance of Anger. I've talked about this book. It was a life-changing book for me. Have you read it?
I have not.
So Harriet Lerner writes a series of books. It's called The Dance of Anger, The Dance of Connection, The Dance of Intimacy. And she really dives into, the first 2 pages had me hooked. And it says that anger is a sign and one worth listening to. So aggression and anger, right, for women is often tied together. And it says that, it's just a sign that something's out of alignment. Either your values are not being honored, that, so like you said, women storm, that is their sign. That's the way they show you, hey, something's not right for me. Something's not right about this. And if you cannot, if you can get yourself to the place where you are saying, hey, listen, this isn't about me, this is about her. If I just stop and listen and actively listen, if you don't know what it means to actively listen, please research that. It is a thing. It doesn't mean that you have your phone and you're scrolling through, or that you're like doing the dishes. It means you're sitting down, looking into each other's eyes and really hearing what the other person is saying. Because that's how you get to the gooey center. I keep talking about that gooey center. It's how you get there. It's how, when that person, Oprah says this, most people just want to know, do you hear me? And does what I say matter? Do you hear me?
Mm-hmm.
Is what I'm saying, do you care about what I'm saying? And do you care about, and I would extend that out to say, does what I say matter enough to make you change? And I don't want to change you, but maybe just change this dynamic, change, how you're saying things, change how this works in our relationship.
Yeah,
but I don't think society gives men the room to do the kind of work you have.
Yeah, well, certainly my father didn't teach me that, and value a woman, that she has opinions, and that probably look, I believe if you're, how do I say this without sounding male chauvinist?
Oh, just say it. We'll clean it up later.
Ariel is a it's not even a compliment, but I'm who I am partly because of my relationship, because I feel worthy, I feel heard, I feel like I matter, I feel referred to, or asked my opinion about things, and vice versa. I think she feels those things too. So you mentioned something before about actively listening. So what this work has told me, or has taught me, is dig deeper, dig deeper. So I'm having a conversation with someone. Maybe I'm angry, I'm letting off steam, and that person's trying to fix me. You can't be angry about it. You got to let it go. You got, whatever they're doing, it's coming from love. I think, I really believe that they're trying to help. I think the other thing they're doing is they're projecting so you're having a tough time, you're struggling with something, they might be struggling with something similar, or they might be feeling the same emotions, but it's scary to look at those emotions. I think women are more likely to look at their emotions. Maybe that's why you guys storm. That's why you guys are so passionate, because you look at something, it bothers you, you take the time. Most people, if you ask them what emotion are you experiencing, they don't know. They don't have a clue. They don't even know they're angry. They don't know that they're in rage. So you might be connecting to that anger for whatever reason, and it might be threatening to a partner. Someone sitting on the other side of it saying, God, if I was a better man, Bernice wouldn't be angry. I could fix this for her. I must not be good enough, so I'm going to shut her down before she realizes I'm not good enough. And again, that could all be unconscious. And it could be coming out as, he just doesn't hear me. He doesn't want to hear me. He doesn't care about me. He doesn't love me. Where it might be, how ironic, he doesn't love himself. He doesn't trust himself. He doesn't believe in himself. It's more of a projection of his own self-worth, maybe projecting onto you, because your ability to connect to your emotions, which is a gift, is a threat to him or the partner. That's why, again, this work is so valuable to me. I can look at someone who's seemingly uninterested, judgmental, dismissive, annoyed, intolerant, and say, maybe there's something deeper going on for this person. And if that person is willing to work with you, Bernice, right, then all is saved. If that person is not ready, because people are at different parts of their journey, that person that partner might not be ready, and nothing you say or do is going to get that partner ready. So maybe it's time to move on. Maybe it's time to say, to separate with love, like the program says.
Yeah, no, I mean, it's happened to me on more than one occasion where, I feel like I've gone in a different direction than someone. And more recently, I've done, like, as I came into this year, I did, and one of my podcasts was, I did this whole, I broke my relationships down to 3 categories. Tune them up. It was with a person that I knew I could had the same kind of emotional intelligence, right? Where I knew that I would be heard, I would, valued and respected. And I had maybe a hard conversation with them. The second person was toss it out. And I said in the podcast, like, it may sound really harsh to say that, but when a person is just like, you've done all of that, you've talked ad nauseum, you've negotiated, nothing's changed. Like you said, I do it with love. And then the other one is just like, that mom online is like, so what college is your boy going to? Like the one, and you're laughing because you know exactly who she is, right? And we're not talking about, an actual person, but there are, you've seen that genre of a person, right? So that person, your kids play football or dance or cheer or something like that, and they have to be in your circle, but they're not someone you hang out with and not someone that you have a lot in common with. But you do have this small thing that you do share. So I said, you just kind of let those relationships be.
Yeah.
But we promised the audience a fearless conversation, and you talked a little bit about, and you promised me you'd be okay having this conversation. I just want to let our listeners know that I got your permission to dive in this direction. You talked about how much different the intimacy is with, Ariel. And of course, I want you to keep her in a safe space, right? That's I love Ariel. She really is a wonderful person. So can you talk to the extent at which you know her, that she'd be comfortable with? And the reason why I want to go into this conversation, I just want to kind of preempt this, is I want to kind of point out the reward of doing this work. I want to give men an incentive, because I can tell you that whenever I've been able to reach a certain level of this with a man, the sex is insane. Like those hours of, passion, and then there's the pillow talk afterwards, after you've been able to connect on that level, is just.
Yeah. It's all good. And now look, I would reveal everything, but my children might listen to this podcast. They might think about their mother. Like, I'll tell you this.
That's why I preempted it.
I know. And you're very respectful.
I want to be respectful.
And God, it's so important. Like, if I just said, like Frank says, I'll use Frank, my therapist.
Yes, use Frank.
He said there's no drug, there's no amount of alcohol, there's no amount of heroin, there's no amount of money, there's no amount of car, house, pool, that's as powerful a euphoric feeling as when 2 human beings connect intimately on a truly authentic level and completely give themselves to each other. There's nothing, you can't match it. That's why he says we get into trouble, we get into these affairs and relationships because we're looking for that high. It's a good high. It's a shot of B12, like he says. It's a rejuvenator. Once you leave from that bedroom, literally, you're on top of the world, man. You can do anything. You're like, God, life is worth living. Who can I go out and help? What good can I do in the world? How
Right.
confident am I right now? How incredibly connected and purposeful and meaningful do I feel? And it's wonderful. Now, that takes tremendous amount of work on both parties. I always say to someone that if they're in a relationship, they ask me relationship advice. I ask, is your partner doing the work? When I say doing the work, are they talking to a therapist? Are they in a 12-step program? Are they just searching, just open to, you know what, something's not right. I'm going to be accountable and know that I'm bringing something to this relationship that's either jeopardizing it or sabotaging it. I got to own my shit. And I think if someone just does that, they'll find an answer, whether it's therapy, a 12-step program, journaling, a self-help book. I just think a therapist is so good because if they're good, they'll laser focus. They'll get rid of all the mess and distraction and nonsense, and they'll just laser focus you right here. Here it is, right here. This is what's going on for you. That's what a great therapist can do, I think, in my opinion. So I want to tell you about a conversation I had with my daughter because it's powerful. And my daughter said, why couldn't you have treated mom the way you treat Ariel? And it broke my heart when she said it. But I gave her that space because of this work. I gave her that space to ask that. And then I was able to have a conversation with her and say, mom is wonderful. She's beautiful. She's smart. All the reasons that I was attracted to her initially, she's still those things. But our paths at some point went different. Life is tough. It's messy. Finances, kids, mortgages, houses, cars, all that stuff gets, I think, distracts from the true connection, the reason you got together to begin with. And not to go too deeply into it.
Right.
So I was able to have that conversation with my daughter because she saw the relationship that I have now. And I know my ex is happier. I know she's happier because we came to this conclusion. I'm not going to give away too many details of it, but I know she's happier. I'll leave it at that.
Right.
And it allowed me to have this conversation with my daughter, and my daughter was able to witness the relationship that I have now, that she could actually comment on it. That basically what she was saying is, you have a good relationship now.
And I think it's so interesting as I watch you talk about all these women in your life, how you've come to this moment of reconciliation, right? So the work is that you needed to apologize for the past, right? You needed to make amends and own what your responsibility was with your ex-wife. In your current relationship, your commitment is to do better. And the forward motion is that you're teaching your daughter, that there's no such thing as perfection, right? That we will all at some point falter. We will be, we are not flawless human beings. Even daddy is flawed. But you know what I did? I went back, I learned to be better. And then I went back and apologized. And now I'm actually doing better. And so I can teach you to look for better. Mm-hmm. And I think that is the full reconciliation, 360 or whatever you want to call that view. I mean, what I love about the work that you've done. And Peter, I could, and we have sat on the phone for hours at a time. But like all good things, this conversation has to come to an end. But before we go, I want to leave the men listening today with one of my favorite quotes, and it's from the movie Crazy Beautiful. I'm a big believer in quotes because I think they kind of just give like a snapshot, or they put a cute little bow on a conversation. And he's in the end of the movie, she says, there are millions of people out there, but in the end, it all comes down to one. I still panic sometimes, forget to breathe, but I know that there's something beautiful in all of my imperfections, a beauty in which he held out for me to see, a strength that can never be taken away.
Hmm.
And I think men maybe are not aware of how they can empower, give permission. And I won't just say men. I mean, I want to just be very, very clear. I think women, and to this point, this is a whole nother cul-de-sac we can go down, but women have to really give their men permission to be this vulnerable and not judge them. And in return, do the same thing, hold that space when he's trying to work through the messy, hard stuff. When, you talked about before, when it has to be done in a safe environment, when a man comes to you and he says, wow, I really fucked that up. You just sink back into your chair and listen.
Mm-hmm. Well said.
Listen.
Well summarized.
So what resources, I asked you earlier in our conversation, what resources have been helpful for you? What resources would you like to leave? Like books you've read, podcasts you've listened to? We talked about Date with Destiny. We'll make sure that's in the show notes too. What other resources do you have that you can give our guys today?
I guess the beginning of my journey when I hit my bottom, that's what it's called, hitting bottom, was a good therapist. And I was just on a life coaching, health coaching call earlier, and they said, how do you find a good therapist? I said, attract them into your life. I really believe in that if you want something, it's genuine, authentic, dream on it, meditate on it, pray on it, visualize, think about it, breathe it. You will attract that into your life. Now, be careful. It works both ways. If you think about worry, anxiety, financial distress, you'll attract that into your life too. That's what happened for me. But a good therapist could help you just cut through a lot of the nonsense. And how to find a therapist, there's not one way, but if you're going to filter them, if you've got childhood trauma, and most of us do, some type of trauma, it doesn't have to be obvious. You didn't have to be beaten or left on a stoop somewhere. You could have still been traumatized by well-meaning parents. Abandonment is very subtle. Find a therapist with a childhood trauma or childhood dysfunction background. I think that would be extremely helpful. A 12-step program, if it's appropriate. Certainly if you have an addiction, whether it's porn, gambling, alcohol, sex, binge watching, social media, Netflix, seek a 12-step program. That's what they're designed to do. My program it's not my program, the program that I went through, Adult Children of Alcoholics, as far as I know, it's the only one that looks at generational trauma and not just you and changing your behavior through like cognitive behavioral stuff, sort of. So those are two things. Gabor Mate, Gabor Mate. Gabor Mate is a medical physician that has dedicated his career to studying or looking at childhood trauma and how it manifests later in life. He's done some incredible books and presentations. One of them is called When the Body Says No, and how suppressing emotions manifests as disease later on in life. There's a lot of compelling scientific evidence about that. Those are some of my favorite resources. And I love listening to different podcasts. I listen to a broad range. I don't know that there's any one podcast. Bernice, I just try to dig deeper than the noise that's out there. There's a lot of noise out there. For me, if someone is judging, if someone's angry, if someone is saying the Democrats, the Republicans, the Christians, the Muslims, the gays, the straights, if someone's saying that, what I hear is that person's not working through their dysfunction, their trauma, their past, etc.
Right.
So I'm just going to shut that out. I don't listen to the news, especially before you go to bed, but I don't listen to the news. I get the news because I attract into my life the news that I need to hear.
Yeah, I'm the same.
That just happens for me, because if I
I'm the
listen to
same
the
way.
news, if I listen to the news, I'm lost. The world is coming to an end and everyone sucks. And I don't want to believe that about everyone else. So
It's so true.
those are the top resources. I love Tony Robbins. I like Eckhart Tolle. I like Joe Dispenza. I just think Frank says this too. We talked about it. Their content is for the masses. It's for big audiences, it's for books. And it doesn't dig deeper personally for each individual. That takes time. It takes a good therapist. It takes dedication to sit literally in the middle of your bedroom, sometimes on the floor, in pain, feeling the pain. It's almost like going through withdrawal.
Yes.
And literally feeling the pain. And instead of numbing out with Netflix or porn or alcohol, it's just sitting with it and saying, man, something is wrong. I really want to find the solution. And if you're spiritual and say, God, give me a sign, show me the way. And when I do that, something always comes into my life. My middle daughter thinks I'm a magician. She thinks I have a direct connection to God because she's like, Dad, every time you tell me these stories, you pray to God or you ask for something, you have a sign, and it's immediate. It really is. It's incredible because I'm looking for it. And so once she wanted to go to a party, her volleyball coach forbid the team to go to a party. She goes, God, but she's like, Dad, how do I talk to God? Because I want to go to this party. I'm like, no, that's not how it works. That's not how God works. He's not going to get you to that party.
And trust me, if there was a system like that, I would not teach it to you.
Yeah, right. I'd sell it. I'd bottle it and sell it. So I think all those authors are great. I think they're really truly sharing with what worked for them. But for me, if there's nothing else I stress with this, Bernice, I had to go to the source of my low self-worth. First, I had to identify that I had low self-worth. And then I had to go directly to the source, because one of the shortcomings of Western medicine is we treat symptoms. You can treat symptoms all you want. You can take antidepressants, and I'm not judging anyone. You can get surgeries, you can do these interventions, or you can go to the source of your pain, your difficulty, your challenges, your behavior, your dysfunction, your character traits, your defects, whatever, no judgments. And that will help you heal. That's what helped me heal. And I just feel like that helps so many other people. So thanks for that opportunity.
And I just want to say three things to what when you talked earlier about, working with a therapist. I think it's just, when, don't just go to your insurance policy and find someone vet them. Go read about them. Go read what people are saying about them. See if you connect. Don't just say, oh, this guy's in my policy, I'm going to go to that guy. You're going to get the most bang for your buck if you're working with someone you truly connect with. I do a discovery call, right? It's a 20 to 30 minute conversation, but I'm vetting that person every bit as much. Do I want to work with this particular, prospective client? Do I want to work with them? But am I hearing a lot of, those either or propositions, the Republicans versus is this person coachable? I want to know that before I go into a difficult situation with a client. You will get in difficult situations. You just want to know that you'd be able to progress with that. The other thing I want to say is digging deep. There are authors. The same thing I would say, vet your authors, right? Pay attention to your body when you're reading this. How does it feel? I have to tell you something. Brené Brown, it was like finding Jesus Christ. I connected to her work because I am one of those people. I will go where the conversation takes me. A second ago, I just talked about sex and intimacy. I will go. My best friend Kelly says, she's been my best friend since third grade. She says, I don't really lose my composure, but when I do, I unleash the dogs of war and I will go where they take me. But to vet these authors, find someone that you really connect to, this podcast that you can't stop listening to. Instead of doing Netflix and watching those episode after episode, find that podcast. In my darkest of times, books and podcasts really were my interim people in between my therapy and my coaching. The other thing is you said something important, and this is where we'll leave off today. Sit in it. It's so painful. And sometimes, I call this the game of whack-a-mole. It comes up, it feels uncomfortable, and we want to fix it. We want it to stop. So we turn to things like Netflix, like sex, drugs, alcohol, gambling, whatever those things are. But if you can sit in it, you know, Glennon Melton Doyle tells a story about how when she was in one of the darkest times, she went into this yoga class. She sat down on the mat and for 90 minutes, she just cried. And afterwards, the lights went back on and she was like, oh my God, like I'm a mess. And the instructor, the yoga instructor walked over, put her hand on Glennon's shoulder and said to her, that, my friend, was the work of a warrior. Because she just sat there and she just let the emotion hurt her. She let all of those feelings happen. And I think once you can take yourself and you know that you can sit in that uncomfortable thing, you know you can do hard things. You know that you can progress. And as I said, it's going to get you to the gooey parts. It's where all the playful, all the fun stuff is.
It's worth it, for sure.
It really, I have to tell you, it is a broken down hallelujah. I don't stand here today from some superior, right? Some dominant place. We talked about that before. I sit here today doing counter conversations with you in the most humble, but the most beautiful part of my life. So thank you so much, Peter, for doing this, for honoring National Men's Health Month, and for being such a wonderful friend, for being respectful to all the women in your life, your ex, your current, and your daughter, your future women. I love talking to you, you know that. And
Same here.
I'm looking
Thanks
forward
for this
to us.
opportunity.
I'm sorry.
Thanks for the opportunity to talk about this and share it, because it's really, it's been compelling for me to just, I know I'm not the only one that feels this way. I know you're not the only one that feels these things. And thank you for bringing them to light and giving us a platform to talk about them. I appreciate it.
No, thank you. Thank you for doing it. Like I said, I don't know many men who would. All right, I'll talk to you soon, Peter. Take care.
Be well.
Bye.